All yours, brother.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me tell you how happy I am to be with you. And your age group is my favorite age group. I happen to have the conviction that it is your age group, your generation, that's going to be the powerhouse, the energy that's going to finish the work. And therefore, it's absolutely important that we understand some principles, because the world has been trying to fill our minds with has not just been trying, has been filling our minds with all kinds of other things, so that we don't clearly understand some of the principles, what's behind. We need to understand, first of all, that you are the last generation. There isn't another one. You haven't inherited a survivable world. There is nobody, even in a secular world, scientists or anything, that are predicting that this world, in one more generation, will be able to sustain life. In fact, Jacques Cousteau, the famous marine biologist that you've probably heard about, he said the world has a maximum of 40 years to sustain life. Maybe some miracle will happen and it'll be longer, he said, but there's no evidence that it can last more than 40 years. In other words, something disastrous that will affect the life support system of our earth is going to happen in this generation. So we need to understand that this is it. You're not going to be inheriting something that's survivable. Okay? You were given a world that's auto-destroying itself. So therefore, your values have to be different than any other generation. You have to be able to say, I'm going to live my life that will be the maximum impact that I can make it. It's not just a matter of making a good living, retiring, and having a good retirement. That doesn't exist for you. Sorry, you were born in the wrong generation. Okay? So if you understand that, all of a sudden things take on a different a value, a prioritize the way you choose your things. You have to make decisions about how to get off this planet alive and how to take as many people as you can with you. Okay? That's the only thing that counts. If you stay on this planet, you die. Because only those that get off this planet alive will survive. And so since that's what you have, of course the devil will flood you with information. He wants the whole generation to think everything is peace and safety, and suddenly sudden destruction cometh upon them. So if you say to yourself, everything is okay, everything is okay, everything is okay, you can almost get a sense that everything's okay. Because the whole world is trying to communicate everything's okay, but people are scrambling everywhere. And if you just have your eyes open a little bit, that's number one. This is it. Number two, you have the option. You have the option of making some decisions with your life on either to live for yourself or to become a great blessing to the world. And your decisions will determine that. Now, if you just live for yourself, you can go through, pursue a profession, get a job. Well, we are to pursue some kind of skill and profession, but not for yourself. The purpose to getting an education is so you can serve better. And so it's all about service. If you live for yourself, you will be severely disappointed because you will not find what you're looking for. You will not find something that will make you happy. I've met Bill Gates twice. And Bill Gates finally discovered that fulfillment is not in having money. It's in giving it away. Right? He quit his job. He put somebody else in charge of Microsoft, and he and his wife are spending their full time giving away money. He finally figured it out. And they traveled to Africa, and they traveled to South America, and they traveled everywhere, looking for ways to give money to improve the world. And he said, for the rest of my life, that's what I'm going to do. Okay? Now, why does Bill Gates have to teach us lessons? Why can't we teach him? Well, I've met Bill Gates twice, and I believe that, by the way, all the money that he has is going to be available to us. Okay, God, if you, I'll share it too. I may share it again with you in church, but if you want to open your Bibles with me to Ecclesiastes, I'll show you why I believe that. Ecclesiastes 2:26. Let me read it to you. For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But to the sinner he giveth great work to gather up and to heap up, that he may give all of that to him that is good before his sight. So to the sinner, God makes him work, gives him plenty of work to do so that he can pile up and heap up the riches. What for? So then he can take it and give it to his children to finish the work. You see, Ecclesiastes 2:26 is where that's found. And so therefore, I believe that all the work that Bill Gates has been doing to pile up the riches, to be able to generate wealth, it's to give away. And not only that, it's to give away to God's people. One of these days, we're going to need it. Now, if Bill Gates were to call today to the Seventh-day Adventist Church and say, I have $1 billion I would like to give you. Do you have any kind of budgets? Have you made any plans? Any $1 billion plans? What would we say? No, our plans are kind of much lower. They're kind of like in $10,000, $20,000, $100,000. Well, in that case, I'll just give you $100,000. But if we make $1 billion plan, God knows how to move $1 billion. Bill Gates made a plan for $20 billion. Actually, it was closer to $30 billion. And did you hear last year what happened? Or earlier this year? You heard? His good friend came to visit him and said, Bill, I like what you're doing, but I don't have time to do it. So I'm going to give you my money. And he gave him nearly $30 billion. It was the biggest gift in history. $30 billion. Why do you think he gave it to Bill? Because Bill was already working and had dedicated that much money, so he doubled it. So I would like to share with you another principle. If you give of yourself, God will double, triple, and more than that, your influence. But you have to move first. Nobody's going to come and give you anything until you start moving. So you have to make a commitment. If you commit to something, other people will join you. A young lady just wrote to me yesterday by email from Colombia. I spoke there last month at a church filled with young people, young professionals, doctors, dentists, lawyers, bright young people. And one young lady came to see me afterward, and she said, I'm the director of marketing for a very large organization. I thought to myself, you're old enough to be director of marketing? She just looked like a little girl. But she was a bright young girl. And she says, I told all the young people to call me Uncle David, and you can too if you want. So she said, Uncle David, I really feel like God is calling me to work as a missionary, but I have a very good job. My last one I lost because of Sabbath, but God gave me another one. What should I do? So I asked her, I said, what's your calling? I want to be a missionary. Then follow your calling. She goes, do you have work for me? Oh, I have plenty of work for you. I said, I can. Where can I work? I said, I can give you orphanages, I can give you schools, I can give you broadcasting. Actually, I said, I would like to see you in broadcasting. I think that you could do a wonderful job speaking to the camera and communicating to young people. You could market an idea. It's time for young people to recognize their calling in their life. It's a divine calling. Every single person. Nobody can be left out. And so I said, I would like to put you in front of a camera, but first you have to develop some skills in that area. And she said, I'm willing. Her mother called me just a few days later in the States when I got back. She was a little worried. She goes, are you sure you have we're very proud of my daughter. She has a good job. You sure you have a place? I said, I explained to her, and she goes, okay. Well, she got so enthused that the grandmother just bought the ticket for her to go to Bolivia to our network to work. And she said, I'm already, when I'm resigning, I've told my boss I'm resigning, and they just tried to double my salary and offer me a higher position, like a vice president type thing. And then they tried to keep me there, and I'm telling my friends, no, I'm going to be a volunteer. I'm resigning. Can you imagine? From a vice president type position they want to give her, she's going to be a volunteer. She's turning it all down when everybody would stand in line for that job. And she said, this is the greatest joy of my life, and I'm telling all my friends and everything, and they're coming together. I don't understand what you're doing. Your value system is different than ours. She said, you want to come to church? I'll tell you. I'm going to be sharing my story. So she's invited all her friends from work, all the other young people that she's with to come. That young lady has discovered the true calling to her life. And that's all of your calling too. It's not about getting a job, it's about doing a job. So you see, you have one generation, your generation. It's the final one. You have a high calling. Unlimited resources. Do you accept that God owns everything? Do you accept that premise? Some of you are just looking at me. If I'm getting through. Okay, just nod at it. Do you accept that God owns everything? Okay. Okay. If God owns everything, then the next question is, are you God's daughter or son? Because if you are, it's just like if you were the daughter of Bill Gates or the son of Bill Gates. You could do whatever you needed to, and your dad would pay for it. And if your dad owns the whole world and the universe, is there anything that you can do that will fail? No. In fact, Christian Service, which is my favorite little war manual, it says, I would encourage each of you to get one of these. If you want to know how to make decisions about doing something, Christian Service is absolutely the best little book. I carry that's already worn out. I bought it new and it's already torn to pieces twice. But she says there, we're not to talk about, worse yet, even think about failure. There can be no failure when you work with somebody who's never experienced failure. Do you understand? Now, you also need to understand something else. God right now is in a process of conquering the world. Right now. Most people don't know that. Most people think that we're living normal and someday a great crisis will come and yes, that's true. But what they don't understand is, at this very moment, God is like the imagery of Revelation 6, is on his white horse with authority, has a crown, he has a bow in his hand, which is a war, instrument of war, and he's going forth conquering and to conquer. Now, he invites you to be part of that conquering process. In other words, you cannot fail. It is impossible. Now, you may go through difficult times, you may be challenged, but you cannot fail. Guaranteed success. Because it doesn't say on there, he went forth conquering and mostly to conquer. It just says, he went forth conquering and to conquer. There is no failure involved. Right now, if you work for God and you go as a student missionary, you take a term, you decide to experience God firsthand on the front lines or to give God everything, if you do that, he will start using you. When I was 18 years old, I made my choice. I didn't understand life. I didn't understand exactly where God was going to take me, but I just made my choice. I choose to give myself totally to God, to you, and whatever you decide to do with me, that's your problem now. And I made my choice. And I've stuck with that choice. I've had problems and I wrestle with things and there's times I didn't understand things. But I look back and I see where God has worked out all of the issues from the girl that I married, that I met again after I proposed to her when I was 8 years old. Were you there last night? Okay. Well, see, just because you propose to somebody when you're 8 doesn't mean you marry them. Right. I mean, God has to pull it all back together again because puppy love is one thing and real love is another. But God pulled us back together again, and we discovered we were going in the same direction, and we still had the same ideas, so our relationship began to flourish, and that eventually resulted in marriage. But God pulled that together, and in a profession, and he worked out everything. Everything is like click, 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 click. All my life, everything had just clicked into place. Okay, so I was hijacked. I've been beaten. I've been assaulted by gangs. But my angel appeared by my side, pulled me out. I was sent out, I got out of prison. I've been through a lot of hard times. And I've always felt God's presence by my side. I'm not scared of hard times, but who likes hard times? Nobody. But whenever I've been in them, God's right beside me. I physically saw my angel by my side. There's a book called Mission Pilot. And unfortunately, they got stuck with my luggage, and I'm going to send some here to the pastor, and y'all can share them around out, maybe about 5 or 10 copies for the church, and y'all can read it. It's great. It was written for young people. It's kind of a romance book, but it's also filled with all kinds of action and adventure and God all the way through. And if you read that book, it will light your imagination on fire about maybe what God has in store for you. You might say, well, I've just grown up here. I don't have very much. I'm just to survive high school or get into college and university. I don't know. We'll see. That's normal for your age. But as you get into your 20s, you start saying, what am I going to do with my life? Who am I? What am I supposed to do? And it doesn't matter what profession you choose. It depends on your skills that God gave you. Use them. Remember, you have them for only one reason, and that is to carry out the mission that God left his people, to go into all the world with the gospel and preach it to all the world. That's the only reason you exist. If you do anything else other than that, you will sell yourself short. You won't enjoy the great joy of conquering. You will not know till too late that, well, maybe I can slip in, God can forgive me, but you won't be so fulfilled. The greatest fulfillment can be in fulfilling the reason you were born. You want to be happy with your life? Live to the fullest extent the purpose of why you were born. If you do that, God will reveal it to you as you follow. He'll reveal and open up a plan, and as you go forward, always plan A is better. Well, I discovered then those different principles, and we have some more principles. Unlimited resources is one of the principles that you can work with. You can make plans as big as you need to. First, of course, you always start small. You can't fly a jet airliner until you learn how to fly a little 2-seater airplane, right? And you can't drive pilot a big ship until you learn how to pilot a canoe. So there's a growth process. Little plans grow into big plans. Little children go into adults. But if you start that process, you will find that things will mature very rapidly, and you will find God developing. So as you accept those premises of unlimited resources, all of a sudden you can realize that there is no limit to what you can do. Now, Patriarchs and Prophets says that God provides opportunities. Success depends on how you use them. God doesn't just throw success at you. He throws opportunities at you. Have you known people that have turned down opportunities? I never did anything with my life. And you look back at people who live on the street and you talk to them and you find that they've messed up a lot of opportunities. If you want to make a success with your life, don't miss any opportunities. Bam, an opportunity to do something. The one thing you have to do is you have to start deciding between opportunities, because sometimes you can't do everything. And then sometimes, almost always, when God gives you an opportunity, you know it's Him, you accept it. Many times, almost 100% of the time, God will back off a little bit and He'll let the devil tempt you, like that young Colombian girl. She made her choice. I'm resigning my job and I'm going to be a missionary. And all of a sudden, they want to promote her to the vice presidency job. Did God change His mind? Why is that happening? Because God is allowing her to be tested. Are you really sure that you want to do it, or is the love of money greater? And I have found that many times after God presents you with an opportunity, you're sold on it, you pray about it, you have peace, you're going forward, you make your decision. But God backs off a little bit. And then He lets the devil test you to see if you really are committed. Because if you can be bought, you will be bought. You understand? Something will happen that will cause you to waver if you have a love of money. It's just temporary. The devil doesn't want to bless you. He wants to keep you from to receive the blessing, from being a missionary. And so therefore He will buy you, pay you, whatever's necessary to keep you. And once He stopped the plan, you think He's going to keep blessing you? He's trying to destroy you. And so He offers you whatever's necessary, like how nice of that fisherman to offer the fish bait, don't you think? Huh? Beautiful little pieces of meat, how kind. Huh? But there's a hook inside. And so when you have that day, when you get offered something nice and you get a little dizzy, think, why, I never had that much before. I don't know. Nobody's ever offered that much to me. Remember, there's a hook inside. The hook is the opposite direction of the way God wants you to go. Just don't make decisions based on money. You have all the money in the world. Bill Gates is my dad. Then therefore, I'm sorry. You can offer me a job. I don't have to wonder if it's enough. I got my needs guaranteed for. Now, another principle. Another principle is that it's your job to take care of the sheep. God will take care of you. Sometimes we think we have to work to take care of our needs. That's not the case. In every case, when Jesus pulled His disciples out, He always told them, leave your nets, come and follow me. He pulled them away from His employment. But my employment is for my needs. Excuse me? Your Heavenly Father promises to provide for your needs. It's your responsibility to follow Him and to take care of the sheep. If you take care of others, God will take care of you. Now, when a crisis hits, wouldn't you be really glad that you've discovered that God can take care of you? Or would you rather learn from scratch? You know how hard it's going to be for most people when that temptation comes up on the earth? Do you know how hard it's going to be for them to say, do I follow God or do I take care of my needs? I may have to work on Sabbath. I may have to do this. I may have to do the other. But man, I've never seen, I don't know. I got kids and I got a family and I got education, or I got some health needs as you get older, whatever it is. You're going to be tempted to take care of your own needs. That's why it's so important for you to learn now that God can take care of you. So when that crisis comes, there's no crisis. The crisis is for those who don't know, not for you. Now, if you want to go to the Olympics, you better start exercising. If you want to not only survive the crisis, but become a leader, God is training His leaders right now. The church leaders today, they're usually elected, right? We elect our leaders. It's democracy, or they're named by the superior organization, depending on if it's financially self-sufficient or not. Like, for example, a conference, you elect your leaders. If they're a mission, then they're named from the union. But eventually it comes up through a democratic process anyhow. That's not going to be the case after the crisis. After the crisis, most everybody's going to leave. Who's going to be left? Only those that have learned to depend on God. And they're going to be the leaders. Now, some of our leaders that we have today are very good spiritual leaders. Amen. And they will still be there afterward because they're trusting God. But you don't get elected to leadership after the crisis. You get anointed. So we have some elected leaders that are anointed. And we have some that aren't. And the ones that aren't are not going to be there. But anybody can be anointed. It's a matter if you're willing to follow the Lamb. See, it's your choice. Many are called, but few choose to follow. The Bible says few are chosen, It could have said it clear. Few choose to go. Because if many are called, why don't they go? Because few choose. So it's really your choice. And your future decision, your life, your ability to follow God, to be a leader, to be called out to great things, all depends on the choices you make today. Now, another principle is that right now, God is bringing these difficulties for training to His church today on the inside. When a crisis hits, it'll be too late to train. Yeah, of course we'll all learn during the crisis to trust God even more. But if you don't learn now, there is no guarantee you will survive the crisis. So since judgment begins first in the house of God, in the Adventist church today, something is happening very interesting. It's not an easy thing, but there is a polarization taking place. People are making choices. And this is normal, because before the crisis, there has to be only two sides. And so people are making choices where they're going to follow God all the way, or where they're just going to play neutral and just come to church as a club. If you come to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and you belong to the Seventh-day Adventist Club, you're not going to be here very much longer. This is not a club. This is an army. Do you understand the difference? Many Seventh-day Adventist churches are clubs. They just belong to the club. We're the Sabbath Keepers Club. And we do nice things. We have a hospital. We do this. And we go to schools, go to university, study this, study that. And we belong to the Adventist Club. But club members never are willing to give their life for the club, are they? It's only a club. Good night. It's not my life. I just come here because I want to come. But if you understand that this is an Adventist movement, that the church was born as a movement with a message for the world, and if you join that movement, and the church becomes, once again, not a denomination so much as it is a mission. If you realize, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist because I have a mission to the world. If you buy into that, you're buying in for keeps. Your roots grow deep, you understand the reason, you see God working in your life, and you realize that you can do anything through God's power. Amen. All of a sudden, you become a leader. Now, there's a famous anthropologist, Margaret Mead, who said, there's no limit to what a small group of dedicated people can do to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has. Now, that in fact was what surprised me. I didn't realize that only small groups change the world. But that's true. Since when did a large group of people ever change the world? On September 11, they say that 19 people knocked the two towers down. That's the official information that was released. That's not a lot of people, but I think September 11 did change most of the world, didn't it? Would you agree? Yes. Only 19 people. How many do we have here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Man, we could just turn the world upside down just right here in this. Are you understanding a little bit the implications of what I'm saying? If you just want to live a generic life and die, welcome to the club. Everybody else is on their way too. But if you want to live a life that will just turn the world upside down, that's worth living, filled with joy and conquest, yes, some difficulties, but whoever went to war, they didn't have to go difficulties. Whoever won a gold medal, when I was here in April, they were playing the games. What are the games? The what? Commonwealth. Yeah, Commonwealth Games. And and on TV we could see them doing, and I thought to myself, do you know how much pain it takes to make it that far? If you want to become the best in your country, to go sin somewhere, it takes a lot of pain. What do we say in English? No pain, no gain. So if you want an easy church with no mission, no pain, easy come, easy go, you're getting ready to walk out the back door. You have nothing to live for if you don't have anything to die for. If you got something to die for, all of a sudden you got something worth living for. And so if you understand what this high calling is, what a privilege. There's a paragraph I'm going to mention in church later that we need to understand the greatness of the enterprise in which we're involved. It's like if you were called by your government to say, you have been hand-selected to change the world. All the resources you need, all the influence, all the power you need, we'll stand behind you, but you will change the world. Whoa, why did they choose me? Well, guess what? You all are chosen. Okay? You have been selected by the King of Kings with a great task to represent Him to the world and to be His leaders. This is your generation. The people that are retiring, they can support and pray for you. Sometimes they can send money to help, but they don't have the energy. The ones that are still in elementary school, they don't have any idea yet. It is your age that understands what is happening and has the maturity to say, count me in. You're old enough to make your own choices. Amen. Am I right or not? Or would you rather be 5 years old? No. Those that are 95 and those that are 5, they probably don't know what's happening. But if you're 50, 60, 70, you can know what's happening, but your energy level is going down, so you can be a tremendous boost to the young people. But you can't go out there and do the same things the young people can do. The 20s and 30s. Man, you can go out to the bush, you can do other things, you can pick up heavy loads, you can go to war, you can conquer territories, while the rest of people are praying for you and supporting you. Amen. But it's your generation, and that's your invitation. And I've discovered in the last 10 years, I worked for the church all my life, but after 15 years, I discovered that now that I was going to return back to the U.S. with my children, I had not changed the world, and I was disappointed. I loved my work, by the way. I was passionate. I worked. My administrators really loved me. They gave me whatever I needed to get the job done. But there's something about, I looked at the world and it's the same as I left it. I mean, in fact, there's more people that don't know Christ there than when I came. So then I was saying, Lord, no, I can't accept this. I want to change the world. What's the secret? And I had to learn all over again. So the book Mission Pilot that you're gonna be able to read. In fact, we're going to be giving out some DVDs and all kinds of stuff that you can take home and watch. The book Mission Pilot is on the resource disc. You'll be able to read it yourself and on your computer if you don't get your own personal copy. But if you want to get a copy, you can borrow it. We'll have some copies floating around. But it kind of walks you through the process of our experiment with God. Can God really do what He says? And we found out not only does He do what He promises, He's thinking much bigger than you are. Amen. And how come our little experiment that began in the jungles of South America suddenly is on every continent in the world? In 10 years, it has exploded across the world, seizing multiple television networks, airplanes, helicopters, schools, evangelism, primary schools, secondary schools, industrial schools. On every continent? Well, what's the secret? The secret is we finally discovered that there's infinite resources. Amen. As big as you can think. It's bigger than that even. God is thinking bigger. You can become a network owner, an operator. You can operate networks. You can operate airplanes. You can operate schools. You can operate evangelism. You can conquer whole countries. You can conquer continents, if that's what you want. But you might say, well, I'm just a shy person. I have 2 shy sons. My Mexican and Peruvian sons are very shy. They smile and just kind of sit there quietly. They don't have a personality that I have outgoing. They like to stand with me when I'm doing things, but they don't go out on their own. They talk to their friends. Maybe you're a shy person. So you might say, but I don't want to conquer a country. But on the other hand, certainly just making a living and dying is not something you're dreaming of, is it? How many of you are just dreaming of getting a job and punching a time clock and dying someday? Is that a dream you have? Hardly. You want to do something greater than that. Even if you're shy, there are great things that can be done. And we learn these things, and I would like to just maybe open it for some questions and answers. You see, the whole process of experimenting God and experiencing God requires you to take risk. Now, risk is something that some of us like to do and some don't. Let me tell you about a risk that I took. I'm a kind of a high-risk person. Okay? I can live in high-risk situations. Not everybody likes to be in high risk. But you cannot win a war without risk. Regardless of what you do, regardless of who you are, it takes risk. And I went snow skiing for the first time when I was in high school. I had never been snow skiing before. I'd been in the jungles of South America, so how do I know anything about snow skiing? How many of you have been snow skiing? Here in Alaska, they have some during wintertime, right? They have snow skiing, or do you go to other places? Right here. Okay, cool. I went snow skiing, and the beginner slope was just straight down the hill into a bunch of hay bales. And I kept trying to stop, and I was always crashing and crashing. I said, this is boring. Let me go to the intermediate slopes. So I went to the intermediate slopes, and it had a lot of moguls and people going, all their things, but I didn't know how to turn. I could barely brake. Nobody taught me. I was too cheap to get an instructor. So I just learned to kind of go straight ahead, and when I went too fast, I would sit down. And so after a couple of tries, I said, I think I can make it all the way down without stopping. But I said, it was kind of scary because I was going to go faster, 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 faster. Something had to happen. And I decided to try it. And so I went, and surviving all those humps was kind of hard. But I made it all the way to the bottom. And when I got there, horror of horrors, I see two people coming like this. And I didn't know how to go around them. So I just shouted, "Watch out!" And they looked up just as I went right to the middle of them. And they were only this far apart. And with one shoulder, I went, and knocked the other guy down. And with the other shoulder, knocked the other guy down. Somehow I survived. I kept on going, but I was curious. I looked back to see how they were doing. And boom, I hit a mogul. And I was sitting there in pain. My skis were stuck in like this, behind my legs. And while I was sitting there in agony, I saw these guys wash their face, clean their face off in the snow. And one guy came skiing up to me, and I saw it said, "Ski instructor." He called me all kinds of bad names. I knew he wasn't a Christian after I heard him. And then he told me, "Get off the slopes." He said, "You can't be on here anymore today." He said, "You're too dangerous. You'll kill somebody." Well, I had paid too much money to just sit there all day long sitting there no skiing. So I decided I would go to the advanced slope. So on the advanced slope, it was really straight down. But I sat down more often. But I kept watching some people. There was a big hump over there. And people were going, like that guy. Look at that guy skiing right there. See him? And I watched them do that. And I thought, that looks easy. Flying is... I learned from my dad. My dad was a pastor pilot, and I'd been flying. I was learning how to fly. And I learned that if you go fast enough, anybody can fly. Is that true? Huh? Rocks can fly if you throw it fast enough, right? So I decided I'm going to fly too. And when at the end of the day they told me, they had made an announcement, all the academy group has to come down now, we're leaving. I thought to myself, this is my chance. I'll never get to do it again. So I went as fast as I could, like grease lightning. And I went right over to that thing right over there, and I went right off of it. I thought it was going to be like... Nothing is ever that easy. Immediately my feet went straight out, and I went flat for 75 feet. And I landed way down the hill, and I blacked out. When I came to, I had no more skis. And I looked up, and there was this little car coming with a big red cross on it, and all these guys coming with red crosses on their uniform. And I stood up. Fortunately, I didn't break any bones. I took off. I scraped off the snow, and I just walked down. And I looked at them, and I walked down. and I heard one of them say, "You are one lucky dude." They watched me fly through the air, and landed flat on my back, and But then I look back at that experience, and I say to myself, well, I'm evidently a high-risk person. I'm willing to live with really unknown variables and do things that nobody else has done before, go places where nobody has gone. Not everybody can live with that. But there's one thing for sure. If you don't take risk, you can never experience God's total control in your life. So even if you're a low-risk person, you've got to start taking risk. If you're a high-risk person, you might end up being a pioneer like David Gates or Apostle Paul or some of these others that went to places where nobody's gone before. But what about Peter's? Peter's are more high-risk than John's. And Jesus matched Peter with John because Peter was too impetuous. He would just go ahead without thinking. And then John would always drag back. And if the work depended on John, she said, it would go too slowly. If it depended on Peter, he would make big mistakes. So God put them together because together you can make a balanced plan. So among us here today, there's some that are more high risk and some that are very reserved. But if you both agree to go forward together, God will work it out to make it happen. And you can get involved. I would encourage you to make the first step. The first step I would encourage you is to go somewhere as a student missionary for a year. Just fill out an application for the division. Go. I spoke earlier in April. I spoke at Avondale. And as a result of that, I asked, are there any missionaries that go from here? They said, no, we haven't sent any for years. So I said, well, where's the applications? I went to the chaplain's office, and there was a whole box of unused applications. So I started distributing them to all the students. And this year, do you know how many went? 50. Whoa. From one year to the next, from 0 to 50. Whoa. And people are experiencing the fun it is to be a student missionary. And once you taste it, if you want to come to South America, if you want to come work with me, or you want to go some other place, there's plenty of places to choose from. on the website AdventistVolunteers.org. You can find all kinds of needs around the world. But there's other needs that aren't even posted there, that aren't even voted, that are still needed from every country. Or you might even have a dream yourself. Maybe you have roots in another country, and a lot of times people immigrate from other countries, and your grandmother or your parents came from another country. Maybe you speak another language, wherever it is. Whatever your skills are, you might want to say, let's, for example, I came from the Philippines. I'm going to go back and be a missionary in the Philippines because I can understand. So you might have an advantage over somebody who doesn't. But wherever it is you feel led to go, I would encourage you. Hello, come in. Hi. I would encourage you to just make some decisions. Make a decision to risk it. Take a year off. Now, you're not really taking a year off, by the way. There is no such a thing as being a student missionary and losing a year. That's part of your education. Going to the mission field is part of your education. Just as important as staying in school. Because it is your internship. And it will help focus you during that 1 year. It'll help focus you on where you should serve, what God wants you to do, what your calling is. I've had a lot of young people say, after serving here for a year, I'm changing my major. I see things differently. Others say, I'm right on target. I'm going to continue going in the same direction, only that I'm now going to study 2 things instead of 1. And many of those young people come back again, and some of our best leaders, they come back and they say, I've dedicated my life to this. I don't want to do anything else. I've dedicated my life to it, and I just feel so privileged that even though I'd already worked for 15 years, and before I began my experiment, after 10 years, I'm at the top of my career age-wise. I'm in my mid-40s. I'm right at the point where if I'd have been working for a company, I would be reaching the highest level if I was working for a corporation. But I'm working for God, and I feel like I've reached a level of world leadership. You don't know how much fun that is. Is it hard? Yeah. Is it a lonely task sometimes? Yeah, sometimes you take bullets. If you stand out by yourself, people shoot at you easier. Anytime you're a leader, you get both praise and bullets. Because if you stand in a crowd, nobody knows you exist. And we teenagers sometimes like to stand in crowds. It's hard to be a leader. But if you want to train to be a leadership, as you get into your 20s, it's easier and easier to become a leader. But if you decide, this is what I'm going to do, this is who I am, I'm going to follow the Lord, get ready for a great adventure. It'll be some hard training, but it would also be tremendous satisfaction. Job satisfaction is the highest. I'm going to be giving the pastor about 10 different DVDs, all different missionary reports, different people telling their story, what's happening and doing this. It's not just a mission report for Sabbath school. These are young people that are there working, that are doing things and changing the world, and when you see them, you'll say, I can do that. And you might want to do it or join one of those projects. So ask for them. Fill your mind with things. Now, some people ask me, I'm going to be telling some really neat stories during Sabbath school about how God provided some of these, did miracles to provide. But some people say, how do you know God wants you to do something? Well, the first thing you need to do is be obedient. God said, go into all the world and preach the gospel. He said, take care of the orphans. Take care of the street people. Take care. So as you move forward in obedience to what He's already told you, He will reveal the next step to you. And He gave you skills. Some of you might say, I've always dreamed of China. I just dreamed of China. That China is what I've always... Okay, then, move on that and say, Lord, I'm going to China unless you have something else for me because you placed this in my heart and I'm going to fulfill that dream you gave me. And as you do that, you'll find that it'll create tremendous job satisfaction. Most of the young people that come to work with me, they never leave. I'm talking about the professionals. Like once you finish school and you come to work with us, the chances are you won't want to leave. It's too much fun. You just found your life love. And the only people that leave sometimes are those that are single. They say, well, I'll be back. I'm going to find myself a wife or a husband. I'll be back.